Okay, so um, I had another uh, synchronicity occur, and I wanted to talk about it a little bit. Um, it was pretty strange when it happened. A few days ago, I was talking to my friend about we do these card shows, and I was talking to him about a certain inventory, and we have a Star Wars autograph card of Tom Baker. Um, and I wasn't familiar with the with the particular because it was like an animation or something. Um, and I never really thought about it. My friend bought it, and yeah, he has it in the inventory that we share together. And I was just talking to him about it the other day, like, hey, that Tom is that the same Tom Baker that that Doctor Who, right? And so, sure enough, it's the top Tom Baker that was Doctor Who. I'm not a big Doctor Who fan, but I watched during the time of Matt Smith, and so anyway, so I was like, well, that's cool. I didn't realize that we had a that it was that Tom Baker. So it made it a lot cooler in my mind of owning that card. And so later that night, I was just just kind of just chilling out, and then I ended up watching the movie Terminator Genesis. And it's interesting because you know um, Matt Smith is in the movie. So anyway, a couple days later, we have a card show, and I ended up buying one card at the show, and it was a Star Wars autograph of Emilia Clarke. So the person who sold it to me says, "Oh yeah, she's in Game of Thrones," and so and also I just recently was watching the Connor Chronicles, and so it's just weird because I was thinking about it when we were driving home, and I was thinking to myself that, hey, wait, so this autograph I bought on a Star Wars card, right? Um, she was in Game of Thrones, um, with Lena Headey, who's on the Connor Chronicles, right? And she's also in Star Wars, right? So she has an autograph, and I had the Tom Baker autograph, who was a doctor, and um, so also Emilia Clarke, uh, was on the movie Terminator Genesis, um, with Matt Smith, right? So I don't know, it was just really weird of how like all those things kind of converged. Um, to me, I bought one card at the show, and I just found that to be really, really strange. Like it kind of was one of those moments where things seem like set up or kind of predetermined, I guess, in a certain way. Um, you know, I, I mean, honestly, I have free will. I decide what I want to consume as far as like entertainment or whatever. But it's just so coincidental that I'm watching these two programs, and then the thing comes across my way, and I end up purchasing it, and it just doesn't seem like it could just be a coincidence. The odds against it, they seem pretty long, because when we do these shows, I mean, we hardly deal in non-sport type of cards. I mean, the percentage of it is like very small. Um, so it was just a very funny funny, kind of like I said, it's just a little just strange coincidence, to see it unfold like that. But anyway, I was also recently looking at like things that get presented to us, and they're used to promote um, a narrative, and to promote things that um, someone wants you to believe. And so, like, at the example I was looking at was WrestleMania 4, which was at the Boardwalk Hall in New Jersey, and it featured the main feature of it was a tournament, single night tournament for, to crown the WWF champion. And so, Randy Savage ended up winning the tournament. But it's funny because this is 1988, I guess. And they're using it. I feel like this one night tournament was used to reinforce because at the time, you didn't really have, the internet wasn't common. You couldn't Google something in those days. So, the narrative of it is that they had an intercontinental title tournament to determine the first champion, which is Pat Patterson. But if as anyone that knows the backstory, there was no tournament for it, and it supposedly took place in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, which I guess, again, like I said, the internet wasn't like it is today, where you couldn't just look something up, fact check something really easily. So they sold that narrative that there was a tournament, and so, like I'm saying, years later, they're using WrestleMania 4 to legitimize, or flesh out their narrative, to make it more believable, right? That basically, see, this is how they get, they need to crown a new champion. This is how they do it, and that's how they did it before, and that must be true then, right? That's how they got the first Intercontinental Champion via tournament in a place that, if you're in the United States, how many people know in 1988 much about Brazil, right? Rio de Janeiro. So, in this case, you got the World Wrestling Federation. That's, they outright came up with a fabrication, right? A tournament that didn't happen, but that they point back to it, always, right? Pat Patterson won the first Intercontinental title in the tournament in Rio, which, we know it never happened. But, in having the WrestleMania 4 tournament, like I said, it kind of just says, well, this is how they determine a champion, and so they must have done it before because they're doing it now, right? So that can be a very insidious thing, right? So that, like, if you can say, like, okay, well, we're doing this thing a certain way, and if you can point back and say, well, this is how it's always been done, then you can pull over any lie on the population that you want, right? Um, it's like the graveyards, right? If you know you when if you know anyone that's passed away, family member or friend, or anyone that you knew, going to a wake or funeral, um, you might see them. I mean, I went to one a few years ago, a friend, and you go, and it felt kind of really eerie, but you go and you see the body, right? It's like, well, that's the person I knew, right? There they are laying in state, and then you see them close up the casket, you see them put it onto the hearse, and then you see the thing being lowered into the ground. I mean, if you go and you view it, um, and that's what people do, right? They bury. I mean, some people get cremated, of course, but they bury the dead. They bury the family members, whatever. And so that, since that happens, then it legitimizes, right? Doesn't, like, so that if you go to the graveyard and you look at these dates on these headstones, that legitimizes it, right? Because, oh well, we bury, people, bury their dead, right? Um, so that's what they must have always done, and thus all these dates on all these headstones and everything, they all must be legitimate, because that's what happens when you die. You get buried, right? Um, but that's like I said, it's very insidious to, um, because now you could just get an open field, put a bunch of, headstones, and, you could, I mean, maybe you might want to maybe you might want to cover something up, literally, right? Maybe you got something, you know, um, that you don't want people seeing, right? And then you bury it over, and then you put a bunch of tombstones on it, and no one can disturb it, because, oh well, people are buried there, and you don't want to, defile it, you don't want to dig up bodies, um, so it's a easy way that you could cover something up that you don't want people seeing, right? And the narrative is strong where, well, you die, your family buries you, so therefore all these, graveyards, they must all be legitimate, and they must all have bodies in them, and no one ever questions it, right? But there could be stuff under there. Who knows, right? I mean, you're never gonna be able to know, because you're never gonna be able to go in there and dig up the ground, right? Because it's a graveyard, you know. Um, I'm sure it's against the law to do that, and I'm sure that, and it'd be frowned upon anyway. Like I said, it'd be like you'd be defiling, this area if you do that. Um, so like I said, it's very insidious. Um, the way that these things are pushed. Um, I mean, even things like Christmas, right? Giving gifts and everything like that. Like, do most people know the origins of the holiday and everything? No. And even if they did, it wouldn't really matter, right? But the thing is, like, once it's a tradition, then it's like, well, this is how it's always been done, right? Like in our family, since my grandparents' time, right? From when I was a little boy, that's what we do, right? They put up the tree, and I'm not saying that, um, in and of itself, it's a bad thing to, spread cheer, goodwill, um, at any time of year. Um, but it's just very. I mean, the Christmas thing is pushed a lot because there's so much, commercialism and everything in it. But what I'm saying is, like, there's narratives that go deep that they're just they're just not true, and things are being used as, like, branding to protect them, right? Like things like the red brick buildings in the old downtown areas. Um, the story stone buildings, as they call them, right? You got them all over the place where they look like they're made of stone, but if you look closely, the back of the building it's all red bricks, right? That's just fasciated over with, like, some looks like some type of concrete, or some type of process like that. Um, you know, but yet the narrative persists, right? That all, you look into the story of these buildings, and oh well, this certain company, or this certain person, they built it, and it's made out of this type of stone and whatever. But when you go and look at the building, it's red brick, underneath. So the whole thing is just fabrication, right? But there's something there that's hiding the truth. of things. And I've said it before, I've called it out, that there's this thing that seems to be running in the background. And that's why I feel like it's important every day to look at things, ask questions. Don't just believe the official narrative on anything. And be wary of things that they use, things currently going on to um, justify a narrative or history that is not true. Um, I guess just use your intelligence. You know what I mean? Just stay in that place where you you don't just take the official story as fact, and just be a free thinker. And I guess on that, I will talk later. Thanks.